Commander Thale stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the massive screen that showed his dying civilization. Red dots moved across the star map like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. Each red dot represented a war fleet, and each one meant another world burned to ashes. The HFY Republic had been proud once. They controlled 15 star systems, had colonies on 60 worlds, and their blue-scaled people numbered in the billions. Now, after just 2 months of war, they were down to 3 systems and falling back every single day. Commander, the Mordock fleets have taken the Velthan system, his communications officer reported, her voice shaking. That's our main shipyard gone. We're getting no response from anyone in that sector. Thale's 4 arms hung limp at his sides. The Velthan system had 3 billion HFY living there, had past tense. The Mordecks didn't take prisoners, didn't negotiate, didn't even seem interested in the planets themselves. They just showed up, destroyed everything that moved, and left empty worlds behind. How many ships do we have left? Thale asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 230 operational vessels, sir. Most of them are damaged. The Mordecks hit us with some kind of new weapon last week that tears through our shields like they're made of paper. Thale walked over to the tactical display and zoomed in on the enemy forces. The Mordecks had arrived from outside the galaxy 18 months ago in ships that looked like black daggers. No one knew why they were here or what they wanted. They just attacked everything they found, moving from system to system like locusts. The worst part was how efficient they were. Mordock's ships worked together perfectly, like parts of a single giant machine. When they attacked a planet, they did it with cold precision that left no survivors and no hope. Sir, we're picking up another Mordock fleet, moving toward the Zentari colonies, another officer called out. If they take that system, we'll be completely cut off from our remaining allies. Thale closed his eyes and tried to think. The Zent were their oldest friends, a peaceful people who had never hurt anyone. They didn't even have a real military, just some patrol ships for pirates. If the Mordecks reached them, it would be a massacre. That's when Thale remembered the humans. 3 months ago, before this nightmare began, they had made first contact with a species called humans from something called the Sol System. The humans seemed primitive in many ways, still using chemical rockets for some of their ships, still fighting wars on their own planet. But there was something about them that caught everyone's attention. The humans had sent a small diplomatic ship to make contact, and when pirates tried to attack it, the human ship had fought back with weapons that shouldn't have existed on such a small vessel. The pirates were destroyed so quickly that most people thought it was some kind of accident. Later, when the HFY diplomatic team visited Earth, they saw cities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, massive industrial complexes, and shipyards that built vessels around the clock. The humans claimed they were a peaceful species, but everything about their world suggested they were very, very good at war. Get me a connection to the human homeworld, Thale ordered. Sir, that will take at least 6 hours to establish a proper communication link, the communications officer replied. Do it now. Send it on all frequencies. Maximum power. This is too important to wait. As his crew worked to establish the connection, Thale thought about what to say. How do you ask a species you barely know to help you fight a war? How do you explain that your entire civilization is about to be wiped out by an enemy that seems unstoppable? He decided to keep it simple. When the communication link was ready, Thale stood straight and spoke directly into the recorder. This is Commander Thale of the HFY Republic. We are under attack by an aggressive species called the Mordock Empire. They have destroyed most of our worlds and killed billions of our people. We request military aid against the Mordock invasion. Any support would be appreciated. Please help us. The message was compressed into a data burst and shot across space toward the distant Sol system as it traveled through the void, carrying the desperate plea of a dying species. Thale had no idea what he had just started. The humans were about to show the galaxy exactly what they meant by any support. General Blake Rodriguez was drinking his third cup of coffee when the priority alert flashed across his screen. The message that appeared made him nearly spill the hot liquid all over his desk. An alien species was asking Earth for military help, and they were facing complete extinction. Blake had been preparing for this moment his entire career. Ever since first contact with the Cathari, 3 months ago, every military leader on Earth knew this day would come. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity's new friends would eventually need help. He read the message again, noting the desperation in every word. The Cathari commander sounded like a man watching his entire species die. Blake had seen that tone before in human conflicts, and it never ended well for anyone. Within 20 minutes, Blake was walking into the most secure briefing room in the Pentagon. The Joint Chiefs of Staff were already assembled, along with representatives from every major space force on Earth. The room buzzed with quiet conversations as everyone tried to process what was happening. "All right, people, listen up," Blake announced, his voice cutting through the chatter. "We just received our first alien distress call. The Cathari Republic is being wiped out by something called the Mordok Empire, and they're asking for our help." Admiral Jessica Monroe, head of the Colonial Space Navy, leaned forward in her chair. "General, what exactly are we talking about here? Do we know anything about these Mordaks?" Blake pulled up a holographic display showing what little intelligence they had. "From what we can gather, the Mordaks showed up from outside the galaxy about 18 months ago. They don't negotiate, don't communicate, and they don't seem interested in taking territory. They just destroy everything and move on." "Sounds like a pest control problem," muttered General Tony Castillo from the Mars Defense Force. "Except the pests are trying to wipe out entire civilizations." Blake nodded grimly. "The Cathari have lost most of their territory in just 2 months. Based on their message, they're expecting maybe a dozen of our ships to help them. They have no idea what they're really asking for." That got everyone's attention. Admiral Monroe stood up, her weathered face serious. "General, what's our current fleet status across all branches?" Blake smiled for the first time since receiving the message. This was the moment 30 years of preparation would pay off. "As of this morning, we have 47,312 vessels of various classes ready for combat deployment. The Colonial Defense Initiative has been building ships faster than anyone thought possible." The room went dead, silent. Even Blake was impressed when he saw the full numbers laid out. Humanity had been busy since making contact with the galaxy. Every asteroid belt had been turned into a shipyard, every moon had manufacturing facilities, and every planet was pumping out materials for the war machine. 47,000 ships, repeated General Patricia Hawkins from the Titan Defense Corps. "That's more than most galactic civilizations have ever built in their entire history." Blake pulled up another display showing ship classifications. "We've got everything from small patrol craft to dreadnoughts the size of Manhattan. The new Olympus-class battleships are bigger than anything we've seen from any alien species so far." Admiral Monroe was studying the tactical data with the intensity of someone who had spent decades planning for this exact scenario. "General, what are you thinking? A few carrier groups? Maybe a battleship division to make an impression?" Blake looked around the room, at the faces of humanity's top military leaders. These were people who had fought pirates in the asteroid belts, defended colonies from raiders, and spent their careers preparing for the day when Earth would have to prove itself among the stars. "We go all in," Blake said quietly. "Every ship, every fleet, every damn thing we've built. If we're making our debut on the galactic stage, we make sure everyone remembers it." The implications of that statement hit everyone at the same time. They weren't just talking about helping an ally. They were talking about announcing to the entire galaxy that humanity was a major power, not some primitive species to be ignored. General Castillo whistled low. "Blake, You're talking about the largest military deployment in human history. Hell, probably the largest deployment in galactic history. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Blake replied. The Mordics think they can just sweep through the galaxy destroying civilizations. Time to show them what happens when they mess with our friends. Within 6 hours, President Williams had approved the deployment. Across human space, from the massive shipyards orbiting Mars, to the hidden construction facilities in the Kuiper Belt, humanity's greatest armada began to move. The Cathari had asked for help. They were about to get more help than they ever imagined possible. Commander Thale paced nervously around the bridge of his flagship, checking the sensor displays every few minutes. It had been 3 days since he sent the desperate message to Earth, and he was starting to wonder if the humans had even received it. Maybe they decided the Cathari weren't worth saving. Maybe they were too far away to help in time. Commander, I'm picking up some strange readings on the long-range sensors, called out Lieutenant Keth from her communications station. She was young for her position, but she had the best ears in the fleet when it came to detecting incoming signals. Thale rushed over to look at her screen. There were definitely some unusual energy patterns showing up at the edge of their sensor range. What kind of readings? Mordock ships? Keth shook her head, her scaled brow furrowed in confusion. No, sir, these are different. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database. And they single quotes, big, really big. That got Thale's attention. In his 40 years of military service, he had learned that unknown energy signatures usually meant trouble. How big are we talking about? Sir, if these readings are accurate, we're looking at hyperspace distortions that are off the charts. Whatever's coming through is massive. Thale felt his heart skip a beat. Maybe the Mordocks had found them sooner than expected. Maybe this was it, the final attack that would wipe out the last of the Cathari Republic. He was about to order his ships to battle stations when Keth suddenly straightened up in her chair. Commander, I'm getting thousands of hyperspace signatures. No, wait, tens of thousands. This can't be right. Check your instruments, Thale ordered, but even as he said it, he could see the sensor displays lighting up like festival fireworks. Whatever was coming was so big that it was overwhelming their detection. Systems. Then space began to tear open. The first ships that emerged from hyperspace were unlike anything Thale had ever seen. They were enormous, easily 2 kilometers long, with hulls that looked like they were built for serious fighting. Their surfaces were covered with weapon systems that made Cathari battleships look like children's toys. By the ancestors, whispered Keth. Commander, those are human ships. More portals opened, and more ships poured through. These were different from the first wave, flatter and wider, with flight decks that could launch hundreds of smaller vessels. Each one was larger than the capital city of the Cathari homeworld. Thale could only stare as wave after wave of human ships materialized in their space. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers, and ship types he didn't even have names for. The tactical display was going crazy, trying to track them all. How many ships are there? Thale asked, his voice barely a whisper. Keth was frantically working at her console, trying to get an accurate count. I'm reading over 20,000 so far, sir, and they're still coming through. Our computers can't process this much data at once. The human fleet spread out in a formation that defied everything Thale knew about space combat. They weren't just arriving randomly. They were positioning themselves in a 3-dimensional pattern that covered an enormous volume of space. It was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance performed by tens of thousands of dancers. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, Keth announced. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human face. The man looked to be middle-aged by human standards, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His uniform was crisp and military, but what struck Thal most was the calm confidence in his expression. This is Admiral Pete Harrison of the Human Colonial Fleet, the man said. We received your distress call, Commander Thale. We're here to help. Point us toward the enemy. Thale stared at the screen, his translator working overtime to make sense of what he was seeing. Behind the Admiral, he could see other humans working at their stations with the same calm efficiency. These weren't people who had rushed to help. These were people who had come prepared for war. Admiral Harrison, Thale managed to say, his voice cracking. We asked for assistance. We were hoping for maybe a dozen ships to help with our defense. Admiral Harrison smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Thale very glad the humans were on their side. Commander, when humans make friends, we take that seriously. Now, you mentioned something called the Mordock Empire. Where exactly are they? Thale's hand shook as he pulled up the tactical display, showing Mordock positions. Admiral, how many ships did you bring? Harrison's smile got a little wider. All of them, Commander. Every single ship we have. Now, let's go introduce these Mordocks to human diplomacy. As Thale looked out at the human fleet stretching to the horizon, he realized he might have made a terrible mistake. He had asked for help from the humans, but he was starting to understand that humans had a very different idea of what help meant. The galaxy was about to learn that when you mess with humanity's friends, you get all of humanity. War Master Gorth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dark Conquest, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 3,000 Mordock warships moved through space in perfect formation, their black holes absorbing light like hungry shadows. This would be the final blow against the pathetic Cathari Republic. The Mordocks had been crushing civilizations for over a year now, and it never got old. Every species they encountered made the same mistakes, fought the same desperate battles, and died the same hopeless deaths. The Cathari would be no different. War Master, we're approaching the final Cathari system, reported his tactical officer, a scarred veteran who had overseen the destruction of dozens of worlds. Our scouts report maybe 200 enemy vessels remaining. They're clustered around their home world like frightened children. Gorth's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile on a creature that understood mercy. The Mordocks didn't smile because they were happy. They smiled because they enjoyed watching other species realize they were about to die. 200 ships, Gorth mused. The Cathari used to have thousands. It's almost sad how quickly they collapsed. The Mordock Empire had perfected the art of extermination. They didn't want planets or resources or slaves. They simply wanted to prove that they were the strongest species in the galaxy, and the best way to do that was to make sure no other species existed. War Master, we'll be in weapons range in 30 minutes, the tactical officer continued. Should we offer them the usual chance to surrender? Gorth considered this. The Mordocks always offered surrender, not because they had any intention of accepting it, but because they enjoyed watching their enemies realize that surrender meant the same thing as fighting, complete annihilation. Yes, we'll give them the standard offer. It's always amusing to watch them. Gorth's words were cut off by a sound he had never heard before on a Mordock bridge. His sensor officer was screaming, War Master, multiple hyperspace breaches, massive energy signatures, unknown fleet jumping in. The main tactical display exploded with new contacts. At first, Gorth thought there was some kind of malfunction. No fleet could be that large. The display had to be showing false readings. Some kind of electronic warfare trick by the desperate Kid Hari. Then the human ships finished their jump. 40,000 vessels materialized around the Mordock fleet in a coordinated operation that defied everything Gorth understood about space combat. The humans hadn't just jumped in randomly. They had surrounded the entire Mordock force in a perfect three-dimensional cage that stretched across light oars of space. Gorth stared at the display in disbelief. The smallest human ships were the size of Mordock cruisers. The largest were so big that his computers couldn't properly calculate their mass, and there were so many of them that the tactical display couldn't show individual ships anymore, just massive clusters of contacts. Double quotes. What? ... What species is this? Gorth whispered. Sir, we're receiving a transmission, his communications officer reported, his voice shaking for the first time in his career. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human face. The creature looked calm, almost bored, as if surrounding a 3,000-ship fleet with 47,000 vessels was just another day at the office. All Mordock vessels. This is Admiral Pete Harrison of the human colonial fleet, the creature said in a voice that carried the weight of absolute authority. You have attacked our allies, the Cathari Republic. You have 30 seconds to surrender your entire fleet, or we will destroy every single one of your ships. This is your only warning. Gorth felt something he had never experienced before in his life. Fear. Not just fear of death, but fear of something so much more powerful than himself, that resistance seemed pointless. But his pride, the same pride that had driven the Mordecks to destroy entire civilizations, wouldn't let him back down. You dare threaten the Mordic Empire? Gorth snarled at the screen. We have conquered 100 worlds. We have destroyed species that were ancient when your son was young. Admiral Harrison's expression didn't change. 20 seconds. We are the masters of this galaxy, Gorth roared. We fear no one. 10 seconds. Gorth looked at his tactical display one more time. 3,000 Mordock ships against 40,000 human vessels. The humans had them surrounded, outgunned, and outnumbered by more than 15 to 1. Any rational commander would surrender, but the Mordecks had never been rational. All ships, attack, Gorth screamed. Show these creatures the fury of the Mordock Empire. The battle began at exactly 14:27 Galactic Standard Time. Mordock ships opened fire with weapons that had shattered planets and boiled away atmospheres. Their dark energy beams, antimatter torpedoes, and gravity bombs lanced out toward the human fleet with enough firepower to sterilize solar systems. The human response was immediate and devastating. Their weapons weren't just more powerful than Mordock technology, they were more advanced than anything Gorth had ever imagined. Energy beams that seemed to ignore shields entirely. Missiles that phased through armor and exploded inside ships. Weapons that somehow targeted multiple vessels at once. Gorth watched his tactical display as Mordock ships began disappearing. Not just being destroyed, but vanishing completely as human weapons reduced them to their component atoms. The humans weren't just winning. They were systematically erasing the most powerful fleet the Mordock Empire had ever assembled. War Master, we've lost 800 ships. His tactical officer screamed. Their weapons are cutting through our defenses like they don't exist. The battle lasted exactly 12 minutes. When the shooting stopped, exactly 0 Mordock vessels remained operational. Gorth's flagship was the last to die, and his final thought was wonder at how the humans had made it look so easy. The Mordock Empire had just learned that there was something in the galaxy much more dangerous than they were. 3 weeks after the Battle of Cathari Prime, Commander Thale found himself sitting in the most important meeting of his life. The Grand Council chamber on Nexus Station buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for an emergency session that would reshape galactic politics forever. Thale looked around the massive circular chamber, recognizing faces from across the galaxy. There was Ambassador Vex from the Crystalline Confederation, General Zara from the Hegemony of Worlds, and dozens of other leaders who normally spent their time arguing about trade routes and territorial disputes. Today, they were all here to discuss one thing: what to do about the humans. The session will now come to order, announced Counselor Prime Yeth, her ancient voice carrying across the chamber. She was over 300 years old and had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations, but even she seemed shaken by recent events. We are here to address what intelligence agencies across the galaxy are calling the human question, Yeth continued. 3 weeks ago, a previously unknown species deployed the largest military force in recorded galactic history. The implications of this action require immediate discussion. Thale shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had asked for help, not started a galactic crisis. The humans had saved his people, but their method of doing so had terrified everyone else in the galaxy. Ambassador Crix from the Stellar Republic stood up, his 6 arms gesturing wildly. They didn't just defeat the Mordics, they obliterated them. 47,000 ships appeared out of nowhere and wiped out the most dangerous military force we've seen in centuries. In 12 minutes. That's not the worst part, added General Zara, pulling up a holographic display. Our intelligence networks report that humans have established permanent military bases in 8 different systems since the battle. Their so-called patrol fleets are larger than most of our entire space navies. The display showed updated star charts with new red zones marked throughout the galaxy. Human bases, human patrol routes, human industrial facilities. In 3 weeks, they had expanded their presence faster than most species managed in decades. Look at these industrial reports, continued General Zara. They're building new shipyards in 12 systems simultaneously. Their manufacturing capacity is increasing daily. Military recruitment across human space is at levels we've never seen from any species. Thale watched the data scroll past with growing concern. Mining operations on asteroids that had been empty space a month ago. Massive construction projects that dwarfed anything in the galaxy. Factories pumping out warships around the clock. Where did they get all of this? Asked Ambassador Vex, her crystalline body flickering with nervous energy. 3 months ago, we thought humans were a primitive species, barely capable of interstellar travel. Now they're the dominant military power in the galaxy. Counselor Prime. Yeth brought up another display showing human territory. According to our best intelligence, they've been preparing for galactic contact for decades. Every asteroid belt in their space has been converted into industrial facilities. Every moon and planet is contributing to their military machine. They've been building an invasion force, declared Ambassador Crix. This was planned from the beginning. First contact, diplomatic relations, and then military conquest. Thale couldn't stay quiet anymore. He stood up, his forearms trembling with emotion. That's not true. I asked them for help. My people were dying, and I sent a simple message asking for military assistance. They saved us. They saved you, by deploying enough firepower to conquer half the galaxy. General Zara shot back. Do you understand what you've unleashed, Commander? These humans don't just win battles. They win them so completely that their enemies cease to exist. The chamber fell silent as everyone processed that statement. The Mordock Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for over a year, had been completely destroyed in less than 15 minutes of actual combat. Not defeated, not driven back, but erased from existence. We need to discuss containment strategies, announced Ambassador Crix. How do we limit human expansion? How do we prevent them from becoming the next great threat to galactic peace? Before anyone could answer, the main communication screen activated. Admiral Pete Harrison's face appeared, looking as calm and confident as ever. He was sitting in what looked like the bridge of a human warship, with other humans working quietly in the background. Counselors, I hope I'm not interrupting, Harrison said politely. I wanted to address some of the concerns that have been raised about human intentions in the galaxy. The chamber went dead silent. No one had invited the humans to this meeting. The fact that they were monitoring it, and could break into their most secure communications, sent a chill through every representative present. Admiral Harrison, Counselor, Prime Yeth said carefully. This is a closed session of the Galactic Council. I understand that, Harrison replied. But when people are discussing containment strategies against my species, I think we deserve to have our voice heard. General Zara leaned forward aggressively. Admiral, your species has deployed enough military force to threaten every civilization in the galaxy. What are your intentions? Harrison smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made everyone very nervous. Our intentions are simple, General. The Kathiri Republic are our allies now. Anyone who threatens them threatens us. We thought we should make that position clear to everyone. What about your military expansion? Asked Ambassador Vex. The bases, the shipyards, the constant construction. We're making sure we can protect our friends, Harrison answered. The galaxy is a dangerous place, as the Kathiri learned when the Mordics tried to wipe them out. We intend to make sure that never happens again. Ambassador Crix stood up, his voice rising. You can't just appoint yourselves as the galaxy's police force. Harrison's expression didn't change. We're not policing anyone. We're simply making it clear that anyone who commits genocide against our allies will face the consequences. I thought that was a reasonable position. As the transmission ended, one truth settled over every delegate in the chamber. Humanity didn't do anything halfway. When they made friends, they protected those friends with everything they had. When they built a military, they built one that could face any threat in the galaxy. The age of human restraint had ended before it even began, and the galaxy would never be the same.